Welcome, everybody. First on the agenda today is from Yuval about librd Kafka. Yuval, can you summarize the issues we're seeing there?
Sure. So we're using the Kafka library from the official distros, so Ubuntu or Fedora or CentOS or RHEL, and this is a pretty old Kafka client library. It's I think from about 2 years ago, and there are a couple of issues with that. So one of the issues is that we see a crash, and the crash is similar to something that to an issue that is open on this librd Kafka, and they have a fix. And they claim that the crash is because they have some kind of a mismatch between one of their defines to a glibc define. So this is something that they fixed probably more than a year ago, or a year and a half ago, and so this is the most urgent issue. The Ceph. So and I don't see any other way around that, because this is a crash happening there, and we don't really have a good way to fix it now. But this is not the only thing. There are a couple of other things that are more features that they added along the years that we kind of need. One of them is the ability to pass the certificate authority PAM as a string and not as a file. So this would be needed for cases where the person that configures the Kafka broker is not an admin on the RGW machine, which can be happening. One of the use cases for that is that the Kafka is used as a service. So the application owner that configures the topic is the one that configures the Kafka broker, not an admin. So in this case, they can configure or get Kafka as a service for all kinds of Kafka brokers, and if they want to install the certificate of this broker, then they won't have access to the file system on the machine where RGW is running. There are other fixes and enhancements which are kind of less critical, but also needed for security. For example, to an ability to bypass the checking, so the client would bypass the check of the certificate of the server, and this could be a workaround in many cases, like this one, but other cases as well where there are issues for having secure connection between the client and the server. So given all of that, I thought, although in general I don't like the idea, but I thought it could be a better choice to use librd Kafka as a Git submodule instead of relying on the official versions from the distros.
Yeah. I have no objection to a submodule there. I would just ask that we find a way to make sure that it's a temporary solution. That might just mean creating bugs for CentOS and Ubuntu to update the version there.
I mean, I guess they periodically update the version, but I mean, this would be a temporary solution until the next time we would need that. So maybe not so temporary.
Well, let's do it and file the bugs and see what happens in a year.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
We can get rid of it if we don't see it's adding any value.
Okay. Now, I wasn't sure what is the so sure, I can add that as a submodule and so on. But in the past, I had a very bad experience in um, adding that to the build system. So in the past, I tried to add a submodule for something else unrelated to Kafka, and I couldn't figure out the right way to make sure that, I mean, unless we're gonna statically link everything. If we're gonna statically link everything, then there's no issue. But if we want to have a shared object of whatever is built there, then I would need help, because I tried it in the past and I failed to do that.
So just curious, Yuval, how is the lib Kafka currently patched with the Ceph? Like, how do you build it? Because we use the Kafka code base, right? Without the
Yeah,
submodule today?
we don't build it. We just create it as an external dependency, because libody Kafka has been delivered as part of all major Linux distros.
Okay.
So we just count on that. I mean, for our own, for building RGW, we require the libody Kafka dev or devel version, and for deployment, we just need the whatever is delivered. The problem is that they don't update that. I mean, the distros are not updating their version of libody Kafka fast enough. This is where the problem is.
So don't we, our generate.deb.sh would capture that and try to install the latest one by default? Like, I'm just assuming if somebody
Oh,
sets up.
they installed the latest, but the latest of the distros, not the latest libody
Okay.
Kafka. Because we don't take like, I mean, I don't think they even deliver packages, but anyways, we don't take packages from all kind of sources. We only take packages from official distro sources.
So if we add this now as a submodule, assuming now when the cluster is deployed, you will have a Kafka version. So you're going to planning to link it statically. So it's the R gateway uses the statically linked Kafka, or would it try to still use the system install Kafka there?
Oh, no, they won't use the system install. So what I said is that if we're okay with linking this statically, then there's no issue. If we need to deliver as part of Ceph the shared objects, then I would need help in setting up our build system to do that.
In the past, when I've done this, I've relied on static linkage to avoid the mess of shipping shared libraries that could conflict with system libraries.
Okay, then yeah.
Well, they mostly won't. I'm not going to get in an argument, I guess, but I'm not convinced we should be building monster static libs like that into building one giant thing. But
So I think we can. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, for me, the problem with dynamic linking was not conflicting with whatever was on the box, because I think you can name the library like Ceph, libody, Kafka, something like that. But the problem was with the actual build process. I mean, I just couldn't figure that out.
yeah, that's manageable. But I mean, static works, but at some point, we're going to notice that we've created a big. I don't know. I mean, at this stage, maybe it doesn't matter as much as it once did, but basically, I guess it's librgw is getting all these symbols combined in. I don't know if it's a strong reason not to do it anymore. So, but I suspect it's not. I suspect it's not economical. But I mean, whatever.
I mean, again, I don't have a strong.
But start with doing it simple, whatever works, and let's see, and then go from there. We don't need to ask for trouble.
Okay, sure.
I mean, we're building Arrow that way.
We're building Arrow static. I mean, we're linking Arrow statically.
We're building. Yeah, it's being statically linked into and I guess it's librgw.
Okay. Then we're going to have another one. Yeah, so that's the only kind of topic I wanted to raise, and also, of course, I mean, I would need approval for adding a submodule.
The GitHub check doesn't need explicit approval. Your commit message just has to say the name of the submodule, and it'll allow it.
Okay.
It just
Good to know.
protects against unintentional submodule changes.
Okay, got it. That's all for me.
So going back real quick to the discussion about the CA issue, so do you see users passing it in with the create topic API, or would they get it in somewhere else?
No, that will have to come together in the create. I mean, the easiest way would be to send it in the create topic API. There'd be like a big string sent there, and I guess stored as part of the configuration of the topic. And then whenever we're communicating with the Kafka server, we're going to pass that. They have like an API to the Kafka library to pass that as a string and not as a file. But again, this API was added in one of the more recent versions. I mean, this would also be useful for cases like Rook, because in Rook usually you put things like that as Kubernetes secrets, and they are passed as strings because you usually don't want to count on files there. So it'd be a very useful mechanism. I mean, in case of Rook, we can have a workaround. We can take that as a string at the Kubernetes level, and then create a temporary file, write that to the file, and then pass the file to the RGW. So, I mean, there could be a workaround in Rook, but overall, there could be cases where this is really needed.
Okay. In general, I want to rely on the system certificate store, but for special cases where that isn't possible, there is precedent in the Beast front end to read certificates from Ceph Manager instead, and we have to have the string version there.
Okay. So in this case, it's not our certificate, right? So it's the certificate of the Kafka broker that we need to pass in.
Right. So it seems to me like the create topic app is the only way that users would be able to feed that in.
Yes.
Makes sense. Okay. So it sounds like there's consensus to add a submodule. Any other thoughts here? Okay, let's move on to Krinal. Would you introduce your topic here?
Yep. No, it's just kind of question actually. I mean, more than thing. So it's about probably you all might have more insight on this. So today, when we do create topic, we store those topics all. We kind of club those all topics as list and then store them under a single Rados object, which is prefixed by pops up dot. And then if you have a tenant, then the tenant name is added. But otherwise, if there's no tenant, by default, all the topics go into a single Rados object, which is prefixed by pops up dot. Well, just so first question was curious to know like why do we do that, or is like why do we club all the topics under one single Rados object and not create individual just like what we do for buckets or users or something? Probably is it too small a size to do that? I mean, just was curious to know. I mean, I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking. I mean, the reason I was asking this is while I was trying to implement the replication, the metadata handler for the topics. So right now, every time if you're doing a replication, like if the primary goes and deletes a topic, the way it works today is you read that Rados object and then delete it and then rewrite that Rados object. So it's kind of essentially there is no kind of removal. It's rewriting that whole object. So when the secondary guy would sync, it will have to sync the entire big Rados object, assuming there are too many topics in that object, in that Rados object. It will sync the entire thing and then just override there, rather than saying that, okay, hey, I've just removed this one topic. The secondary should just go instead, just go and remove this guy versus like recopying the whole blob. So that was basically the whole question arrived from me. Like, is there any reason why we do that today?
Okay, so first we need the list of topics. So even if we had a specific object to hold each and every topic, you would still need a way to list all the topics, because when you, because you need to go through them and know all of them. So this is why we need them in one object. Now, this goes back to a different discussion that we had in the past, and where in the original design or thinking, a topic pretty much equals an endpoint. And in this case, you won't have many of them, regardless of anything. You would have only a handful of topics. Now, the problem or the design flaw that we had is that the topic really represents an actual topic in Kafka, not just the Kafka broker or endpoint. And in this case, if you want to have a system that is nicely separated for different buckets and users and so on, then you can have a huge number of topics, because they would, all of them would go to only a handful of Kafka servers, but they'll have they can have huge amount of topics in them. So one thing that we discussed.
I don't know. I cannot hear you, or can anybody else?
And
Yeah,
I think would be the right way to go is to separate the definition of that string as yeah.
Yuval, you're cutting out a little bit. Could you repeat what you said in the last minute?
Okay, sorry. So what I said is that we had a discussion before, and I think the right solution here is to separate the definition of a topic as an endpoint from the definition of a topic as a topic in Kafka. So the topic would come as part of the notification configuration and would override or would add to any definition inside the topic that really represents the endpoint. So the number of endpoints we're going to have is not going to be large anyways. Like how many Kafka brokers you're going to have? Dozens, 100, I don't know, something like that, right? But if you want to have a nicely separated system, as you said, where each bucket and each user have their own topic in Kafka, so they can subscribe to it on the other side of the system, then you can have huge number of topics. So I think this separation would make would be the right way to go for many other reasons as well.
So it sounds like we're talking about what to do for metadata sync, and generally there we represent metadata as separate objects. So is it true that we're storing essentially all of the endpoint definitions in a single object?
That's what is happening right now, and that's what I was asking. Basically, we are storing that all in one single Rados object. Yeah.
Right. So we can fix that, but we would still need one object to hold the list of all topics.
So regarding the listing concern, right? So during the full thing, the way today the full thing works is it just tries. There is an API, if I remember. If you know the prefix, you can just do a list of all the objects, Rados object based on the prefix. So we always will have a prefix which pops up dot. So then your listing should be okay, assuming like you're worried about saying if you want to do there is a command list topics, Rados gateway admin list, which would you in which case you would want to list. Correct me if I'm wrong, Casey. You can do that, right? Like using a prefix that is the full thing.
That is correct, yeah. But in general, listing raw Rados objects is quite expensive because the client has to query every placement group that could potentially have objects there.
Sure.
So we try to avoid that in kind of performance sensitive code paths. But if listing isn't part of our existing fast paths, then I think it makes sense to use the same metadata listing that other metadata does.
Okay. Yeah.
It
Okay.
just-
So you're saying we don't need to put the list of all topics in one central point because there's a way to list them even if they're not in one object, right? So yeah, in this case we can create a separate object per topic.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
even without relying on Rados listings, we could build a separate index. We have something like that for the user.buckets object, which lists all of the users' buckets. So, I mean, we need an index somewhere, whether it's relying on Rados and its PG listing or something that we materialize and keep consistent. I think the latter is only important if we want to optimize for the listings, but if we're okay with expensive Rados listings, metadata sync very rarely does full syncs that rely on that, then I think that would be fine.
Also, the reason I also want to was trying to bring this is because right now you, while I was reading your comment, is as you said, right, like the notification is eventually used when you create the like the bucket notifications. The topics are eventually used during the bucket notifications. So right now, because every time you had to go and read, and that read was expensive because you're reading the entire list and trying to figure out, you went and created unique topics for every bucket notification. So you were creating one in the bucket OID, and then you are also creating the same with the same name under the PubSub OID. So essentially, there were 3 topics created for just one notification. So with this, if your Rados, if now going forward you store your topic as a single Rados object, your bucket to find that object would be pretty trivial because you will already have the name, like PubSub.topic name. I'm assuming that's what we decide.
Yeah.
So we then don't even need those unique topics going forward. If to store, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole reason why we did that was because of kind of history reasons, historic reasons, whatever. So, and we didn't want to change the data structures. This would pose a problem even now. So, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, this is the main reason why when we moved to PubSub, from PubSub to notifications, we didn't change the way that the data is stored. So we don't have to do migration. And we just said, yeah, we're just going to hack that based on whatever the same kind of data model that we had. And I think improving or changing the data model is great, but I'm a bit concerned about the cost of doing migration here.
Yeah, the migration is going to be another topic. I mean, that's the topic. First thing was, do we have a consensus? Should we go about this first thing? Like, because if we do this, then the second piece of puzzle of replication, where we also want to replicate the bucket notification. So if the primary site is any primary sites subscribes to a notification, and if you're storing that notification just as an X-adder, extended attribute on that bucket, it's much easier because right now you create those 2 topics, so you'll have to again sync those new unique topics on the secondary side, and then the secondary side also needs to pull in those topics and then also create X-adder. So the syncing of bucket notification was also mess because of this whole structure what we have right now.
So, I mean, at least I completely agree. I think we have a consensus that we can change the data model, especially, as you said, adding the. So the notification is actually, it's like a bucket policy. So it should go with the bucket for sure. But I think the decision of whether we actually want to do that or continue somehow with what we have right now is really based on how to do the migration. I mean, for me, this is what stopped me in the past. the amount of work that is involved in doing migration here. Because it's not like adding a couple of fields to an existing data structure. It's the whole data model is going to be changed.
Right. Trying to read a topic from the existing object versus knowing to look it up under a different name.
Right. And
Sorry.
there's much more to that. I mean, for example, currently we have like a cascade delete of notifications when we delete the buckets, and I mean, of course, that would be easier if those are just attributes. But I mean, all that code will have to be aware of whether things are working in the new way or the old way. I can come up with a list of issues. Try to summarize them and see, and we can have a look and see how much work is involved there.
Yeah, so if
yes.
we're
Sorry, Casey, go ahead. Yeah.
just going back to the multi-site metadata sync issue, it's it's better if there's separate metadata objects so that incremental sync can only transfer the newly added topics, for example.
Right.
But if we really do expect the number to be very small, then any changes would replicate the entire metadata object with all of them. So if that is intractable, then I think that we do need to do this migration and break it up. But if you think that it could work just kind of inefficiently, then maybe it's not a requirement.
I mean, it does. It can work ineffectively, but it's just that we add on to that, like we just carry on that tech debt and then add on just band-aiding more stuff on that existing mess. That's how I would try to term this as.
Yeah, I feel like that now. I mean, the whole multi-site thing is kind of a good enough push to clean up the technical debt that we have. I mean, before that we didn't have this push. We can buy a little more time by doing the change that I think is needed regardless. The change to separate the topics name from the endpoint definition. I think this would kind of keep the number of topics very small still. I need to make sure that there's no issue there. But I mean, this could be some step to help us. But although I guess we also have the auto-generated topics.
So that would go away, right? That's what I'm saying. That was done for the bucket notifications.
No, right. But I mean, my question is, if I add the topic name, like the Kafka topic name definition into the bucket notification, yeah, then in this case, there might be a very small number of topics. That's my question.
I mean, the reason I bring this up is way we foresee, or the way we run here. Like we have multiple RGW users, like the S3 users, and then each of them can spin multiple topics. And at this point in time, we do have more than 3,000 users, individual with unique access key. So they could technically go and create individual topics. So they all would go and be stored under one gigantic object, and every incremental thing would then try to pull that object every time somebody does any changes to the topic. So that's the only reason that I bought this up. I mean, in our case, yeah.
So my question is, I mean, you don't have 3,000 Kafka brokers, right? You have, I know, a couple of them, and you have many topics on them, right?
So they are all individual users, so they can spin up their own Kafka. So probably they might have their own broker, is what I would think in that front. Like they're all isolated users. They are not individual. Like they're not kind of single user.
Okay, I see. So each user represents like a whole bunch of
right.
workload.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in this case, I think we don't have a way around that. So if they spin their own Kafka brokers and so on, I guess this relates even to the previous discussion of, if the different users, they spin the Kafka broker, then those users probably don't have access to the, or admin access to the RGW machine, right?
Right, they do not have. We as a storage provider have the access to the machines, right? Yep, they don't have the access.
Right.
And that was the whole push for having that separation of ownership of the topics, because, yeah.
Yeah, I see. So, yeah, so I guess we don't, I mean, I'll try to do the analysis of how much work is involved. I mean, 3,000 topics is not a small number, but it's not
Big
not
number as
something
well.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think thinking that is really a huge issue, but I mean, this is a good enough reason to try and clean up the data model there. I just need to try and figure out what is the cost, or what are the gotchas and problems that we're gonna run into with migration.
Right. I mean, that's the biggest challenge that I had. And what I was thinking is, in past, when we moved from like unrelated, like from OMAPs to FIFO and stuff like that, we had both options of running. Is that something, an option as well here? Like you could run two systems at the same time and then eventually migrate or something?
I think we'll have to do that. So this is probably the only viable way to do that. The problem is that it is usually complex, and you write lots of code to actually allow for those two systems to run in parallel.
Yeah, if we want to remain backward compatible and not require migration to happen as part of the upgrade, then it's hard to avoid complexity there.
Yeah, because you can have like different RGWs running at the same time at different versions, and
Yeah.
It might be possible to allow this conversion to happen at like a per bucket level. So if you set a new topic for a bucket, it would use the new format, and the bucket itself would know which format it's using, as long as the notification logic in the background could understand both, I guess.
yeah. I'll try to map the issues, and then we'll have a better picture. I mean, overall, it's going to be a great move, but we need to understand what is the cost of migration.
All right. I mean, so should I hold on to the PR that for the replication that I'm working on, or I don't know, like, do we still want to then, do we want to implement that multi-site syncing for both systems, or then we still have that only for the newer systems?
Well, ideally, it's only for the new system, because this is another level of complexity of supporting two data models for multi-site syncing, which is by itself an extra complexity for the whole thing. So
Correct.
if it is possible, so I mean, well, it depends. I mean, do we like is the goal is going to be to aim for the squid version, like for the next version or something like that, then we still have time. So we can say, okay, let's put that on hold. Let's try to push forward with the data model, and then the data sync is going to be simpler. So, I mean, the question is, if this is something urgent that you want to build off of main, then this is one thing. If this is something that you want to release in the next official Ceph release, then I think it's better to wait and do that in the more logical order of things.
So when you say if build out of main, as in has support the existing current version, and then when we carve out the new one, we will rebuild or rewrite the code for that as well. You mean? I mean, support both systems Talia? I mean, it is urgent for us, yeah.
No. My question is, I mean, we can probably make a commitment in saying that's going to be fixed by Squid, right? And if this is fixed by Squid, then it's better to do that at the right order. First, fix the data model, then do the syncing, because this is still a couple of months ahead of us.
Right.
If you're building for your own deployment, your own kind of private build of Ceph off of main, then this is kind of a different thinking. So, okay, from my perspective, because I kind of, when I build something, I build that for an official release. From my perspective, the best thing would be to fix the data model and then do the multi-site syncing, because we still have a couple of months before we deliver the next release.
Yeah, that would be my preference. At the very least, just scope out a design for a new data model, and we can try to build a timeline out of that.
Sure. So, okay. Makes sense. Let's wait for the data model and see how it goes about. And then, yeah, we are ready to work on the data model as well. I mean, at least I had an idea now to do that. So probably if we know what things to take care of, and if they seem reasonable enough, we could then, yeah, fix the data model and then move on to the multi-site thing.
Okay. That makes sense.
Makes sense. Yep, that's from my end with respect to this topic. Yep, thank you.
I hadn't realized that notification topics were a gap in multi-site. Are we tracking that on the multi-site backlog anywhere?
So there is,
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah.
There is a
Okay,
tracker
great.
for sure. Yeah, Casey. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, any other thoughts on this one? Moving the agenda forward, another from Yuval about orchestration for standalone.
I actually want to discuss that next week. I don't know why it's there.
Yeah, because he talked about it, and I wasn't sure if you were going to put it in there. But I also talked to Kyle about it. But Kyle isn't here, so I think that's perfect if we move it to next week. But I would like Kyle to be there too, because he has a container that contains standalone, so we might be able to talk about some of it there too.
Okay.
Great. And Ali has been working on the cell config and so I think that the two fit together, figuring out exactly how to configure things during deployment.
Yeah, I was going to put an update about that in the next meeting as well.
Perfect. All right, then last topic from Krunal again about assume role with web identity.
So this is something that we've encountered. Like, I mean, we are looking at the documentation and tried to do our STS testing, and we're getting an error saying that could not get the OIDC provider. Try to look up the documents, couldn't find anything. So looking at the code, we see that it's trying to read from the OIDC pool, but that pool does not exist. So I don't know if there is any STS expert or OIDC guys, or I mean, to know any insights on how do we have to create an OIDC pool before trying to get the role web identity, like trying to assume the identity there, or any document that we could refer somewhere. I mean, we try to look at trackers and but the dev forum and stuff. We couldn't get anything, so I thought probably maybe ask here if somebody knows more about the OIDC pool.
I personally don't know how you register an OIDC provider, but in terms of the pool existing or not, whenever RGW tries to create something or write something to that pool, it would create it. So if it doesn't exist, then nothing has tried to store anything there yet.
Right. So probably, yeah. So while it is trying to, when we are assuming that role, it is trying to go and read the OIDC, and that pool doesn't exist, and it just throws error. So basically, maybe there would be a pre-step where, as you said, right, we do some operation which would go ahead and create that pool. So, okay,
Well, maybe we can create a tracker bug for it and assign it to Preetha so she can get a look at it.
yeah, I reached out to Preeta as well on Ceph Slack, but I haven't heard from her since a week. So I thought probably if she joins in the meeting.
Way, it's a good thing. Yeah, she often does. I mean, but we created a tracker I can up with her. I mean, she may not be reading Slack a lot.
Okay. If you could, yeah.
But there's probably a gap here, either in docs or whatever, and we should fix it.
Okay.
Yeah. Looking at RGW REST IAM.cc, there is a create OpenID Connect provider app. So I imagine that's the thing that writes objects there. And the app should be consistent with the AWS IAM REST API.
Okay. Let me create a tracker and try to dig more on this, the RGW operation, create OpenID connector and see how it gets hooked up in meantime. At least, yeah. But again, yeah, as Matt said, probably having some documentation updating might be also helpful there. So if you could reach out to Preeta, Matt, and just I'll point you with the tracker once I have one. Yep.
You see that? And, yeah, I'll make sure she sees it.
Thank you.
We have test coverage for this stuff in S3 tests. So you could also take a look into that to see how it's using Boto to create this stuff. But I agree that there's a gap in the docs.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Makes sense. So if there's a coverage, that would be perfect. Yeah. I'll look there as well. Thank you.
All right. Anything else for today's call?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay. I'm just a new developer to the Ceph environment. So I've been trying to set up this Ceph development environment. I've been stuck there for a couple of days. So can anybody help me over there, if possible?
Yeah. The project should have some good documentation about getting started. Are you on the Ceph Slack? That would be a good place to ask questions and get help. There's a Ceph Devel channel there.
Yes, I did ask over there, but I could not find any. I could not do any progress over there. I followed the documentation, but I still got stuck over there. So that's why I thought it would be better to ask in a meeting.
Okay. I do see your question there. I'll take a look. If you have any specific questions that you want to discuss here, I'm happy to stick around, but I don't know that we need the whole group for it. So if there's nothing else on the agenda, let's go ahead and call the meeting. Thanks, everybody.